Cam Girl had already started like our own little show type thing where we was like just me and her was just sitting down talking about random shit every week. And we was doing that, and then Adam kind of colonized it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Adam was like, "Shit, we might as well make this into our show instead of
Yeah.
y'all show."
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then he started coming on it, and then that turned into what's now the No Jumper show, like the main podcast on No Jumper. And yeah, it started with just me and Cam Girl. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What gave you like? Why do you think that people were like interested in hearing what you had to say?
I don't know, bro. I really don't know. I don't know why you
Yeah,
niggas like be fucking with me, but I genuinely think that to me, my life ain't that crazy because it's my life, so I'm living it from the fucking inside out.
right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm looking at it from the inside out. So to me, I feel like the shit I don't be. I feel like the shit I be saying be mad regular, but I don't know. I feel like other people be like, "Wait, what? Like, you seen what? Or this happened? Or what the
Yeah,
fuck?" I don't know. I feel like I just have like a lot of insight, and I just seen a lot of shit, and I feel like they just gravitate towards it. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if this is true or not, but I genuinely think that I feel like people can just read when you're being genuine or not, or when you're trying to force a character, you're trying to force being too hard, you're trying to force being Mr. Bitches, you try to force this, you try to force that. And I genuinely just think that I've just been as honest as I possibly could be, maybe almost to a fault.
Right,
I've just been too honest with this shit. And dude, I've been doing this for almost fucking a decade now, which is
right,
crazy to even say.
right, right, right.
But I've been doing this for so long, it was like if I was just sitting up here lying every week or just sitting here just making it, mind you, these niggas have been watching me do the shit weekly
Right, right,
for years. So it's like they would have just they would have just felt the disingenuousness.
right, right,
I
right.
don't know if that was the right word. I just
Yeah,
made
yeah,
that up,
yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah.
they would have just like they would have just seen the bullshit from a mile away if they wasn't fucking with me. So I think just being honest and being yourself and just just having a different perspective. Don't try to just fit into whatever's the popular perspective, or don't just try to like go on there trying to mimic somebody else. I see so many people do that nowadays. It's like, oh, I want to be mini fresh and fit. I want to be mini this.
Right,
I
right,
want to be
right,
mini that. And it's just like, you gotta just be yourself, man.
right.
And that was one thing I was never afraid, no matter who I'm on camera with, who having these debates or talks with, is like, my perspective is my perspective. Now, it's liable to change, like we're humans, your perspective changes, but like some people, they get on camera and their whole perspective changes once they're next to somebody else. You
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
me?
for sure, for
So
sure.
it's like I feel like as long as you don't do that, bro, like people will fuck with you and they'll see the progression.
Come on.
I think that's one thing with me too why people fuck with me, because they could just like it's all on camera, it's all documented, like from where I started to where I am now. You feel me?
Right, right,
So
right. This thing, I feel like there's people coming in and out all the time. Now it's like become a joke almost. We know what's going on over there currently. I mean, people are getting indicted and stuff. So,
hell yeah.
did you foresee it coming to an end at some point?
I mean, bro, like I would have been a dummy if I didn't like possibly foresee something like that, because I just been there so long and I've seen so many people come in and out, and like if I'm just being completely honest, I've seen him do other people way dirtier.
Right.
You feel me? And people that he's known for way longer of a time. You feel me? And it's like at a certain point, I was too comfortable there. I will say that I was too comfortable. Like I wasn't I wasn't becoming a millionaire like off that shit, but it was paying good enough for me to pay my bills. It was giving me exposure. I was making money that way. I started my brand, which was like at that point, once I started the brand, I didn't give a fuck about any of that shit because my shit was going up.
Right, right, right.
So it was like at least I had something tangible that was owned by me, to where it was like if this does fall apart,
Yeah,
I at least got that,
yeah.
and I could always go start my own shit or whatever. Which I feel like I waited a little too long to do, but like it is what it is. It's like better late than never.
Right, right, right.
But like shit, I remember I told Hakeem this after Hakeem left, because Hakeem was so hurt. I remember he was just like, how could he? He's like, bro, I caught fades for that nigga. I did this and that for him. Like, how could he? Like, like how could he do me like that? Basically, and I remember telling him, I was like, bro, like you have to when it comes to business, friendships, relationships, whatever the case may be, you have to be able to assess the type of people that you're working with and that you're dealing with, and you have to be able to assess like their characteristics and just not be surprised by certain shit.
Right.
You feel me?
Right.
And it's like I don't even think Adam is just some terrible ass nigga. I literally just think he's just tunnel vision about himself and what he got going on.
Yeah.
And like to be honest, those are the people that make it the furthest in life. So it's like maybe us like empathetic ass people that fucking care about everybody thinks and cares.
Right, right.
Those are the motherfuckers that ain't gonna make it nowhere.
Mm.
So, you know, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, I don't know. It was like, at the end of the day, it was to be expected a little bit. You
Right,
feel me?
right.
So,
I mean, we kind of know the gist of like why it happened, but really everything came to a pop because what happened. I feel like, truth be told, like I remember watching the episode where you called in and you were explaining like, bro, like why would you do that? Yada yada. But it's like when you came back on to try to like we're trying to explain it, and then the whole scene happens. The cameras, you shoot the water, the camera cuts off. I think people really want to know what happens when the camera cuts off.
But again, let's move forward to that bullshit ass apology when they're on the fucking news. They're talking about, yeah, he's been going through the mom shit, he's been going through the health shit.
Mom shit, and he's getting home for the first time, and he's got health shit.
The person that fucking raised me, that birthed me, my best friend that died. Oh, just he's been going through the mom shit.
Are you actually acting like I was gonna give birth to your mom when
You're
I fucking
disrespectful as fuck. I paid for the fucking birthday
funeral as soon as it
bro.
happened just because just because
So when the camera cut off, so he had this big ass fucking security guard named Tone. So Tone big ass wrapped me up or whatever. This nigga like 6'8", 300 pounds. Mind you, oh man, I hate the throwing the smoothie thing because at the time my leg was fucked up and I couldn't really walk like that. I don't know if y'all remember, if anybody that's watching this that used to pay attention back then, but like my legs was fucked up for a long time. I still don't know why. I have an idea why. I think it was the nods. I was like overdoing the nods at the time.
Okay.
And that shit literally like it paralyzes people.
Wow.
So I really think at the end, like I was having other health issues at the time too. So like, whatever. Like he basically said some shit that was a lie. He said he paid for my mom's funeral, which was hella not true. He did give me some money after my mom passed away. Literally zero of those dollars went to my mom's funeral. I had to move into a new apartment, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like I had got evicted. You feel me? I had shit I had to do.
Right.
None of that money went to my mom's funeral. My mom's old boss that loved her dearly paid for my mom's funeral in full. They paid for the food, the flowers, the spot, everything. You feel me? Shout out to my sister for organizing it. But I think that's what really pushed me to the edge. And niggas said, "Oh, he's like, what do you mean I don't care about you? I pay for your mom's funeral," which
Right.
was like, even if you thought that you did, even you saying that is even crazy. You feel me? But the fact that that wasn't true is what made it even crazier.
Right.
And yeah, so like I hopped up, but like obviously I hopped up slow as fuck. Like now I would have hopped up fast, and jumped over the table and beat that nigga ass. You feel me? But I couldn't do nothing then. I was, so whatever. I hopped up. Tone wrapped me up. All the cameras shut off or whatever. I'm like, fuck you, bitch ass nigga, whatever, blah blah. I'm going outside, right? I'm going outside, and he's like trying to follow me outside to talk, and I'm like, bro, if you walk up on me, I'm literally about to fire you. So he's standing back there. He's trying to talk. Now, I ain't gonna lie. Fuck you, AD. This is AD's fault. It's AD's fault. AD tried to like big bro it and be like, yo, bro, just hear him out. Just let him say what he gotta say. And like, AD was really like, I was just playing. Like, I really appreciate AD because AD was just like, don't just leave it like that. Don't just leave it, just unsaid. Like, say what you gotta say. Finish saying what you gotta say to him. Let him say what he gotta say or whatever. Just like finish it off. Don't just leave it undone like that. And yeah, then that's when I don't know if it's all in video when we came back. We went back and sat there and tried to finish talking it out. But like, at the end of the day, I feel like the damage had just been done already. It was like, and honestly, bro, on some real shit, I didn't even realize this because at the time I had so much shit going on. I didn't even realize, like, bro, that shit happened like that shit was like a couple months after my mom passed away. I was having my own health issues. It was just so much shit going on at that same time that like I didn't even realize that all that shit happened within like a couple fucking months from each other. You feel me? But honestly, bro, everything happens for a reason, and I feel like if none of that shit didn't play out the way that it did, I wouldn't have had that push to go start my own shit, or like, I've had this like pressure to like basically live off of my clothing brand now, which like at first I wasn't like. Yeah, we were making tons of money off of it, but I wasn't living off that money. I was just like,
Putting it right back in and
hell
all that
yeah,
stuff.
you
Yeah,
feel me?
yeah.
It's like
All right,
now it's like I'm on a consistent schedule where I gotta drop, I gotta do this, and I gotta make it happen because it's like I don't have this like cushion. It was really a cushion for me because it was like people was throwing me money for random shit just to wear my shirt on the podcast or like whatever. It's like nigga, they have 4 million subscribers, so all different types of little opportunities would be coming your way or whatever. Like I said, it was a cushion, bro.
yeah,
So like it was like a fire under my ass to like go get this shit on your own, go try it on your own, go do
Right.
this shit on your own. You feel me?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So man, you never know, man. It was really a blessing in disguise. And now looking at all this shit that's going on now, it's like shit. Maybe you was meant to get out there, get out of there. You feel me?
Man.
So yeah,
I could see how if I was there all the time and if somebody's energy was there all the time, that could really affect a person. So
yeah, 1,000%. I
Yeah.
mean, shit. I don't know if he's talked about this, but AD literally convinced me to stay because after Cam Girl left, I was just over that nigga, bro. I ain't gonna lie, like just certain little shit, just the way that he be acting. It's like nigga just think he right about everything.
yeah.
You feel me? And it's like two things could be mutually correct at the same time. It's like I appreciated him for the opportunity. I appreciated the platform and shit like that for exposure to get my face and my name out there more.
Yeah.
But at the same time, man, it was really like he was becoming like fucking so miserable to deal with, bro. At a certain point,
Yeah.
and like I used to be really getting at that nigga. Like we would be getting. You could ask anybody that was in that group chat. I used to be telling that nigga like I would literally beat your ass in the group chat, and like people would be like, he's like, oh, you're talking to your boss like that? No, like people would be getting mad and I mean, not people would get mad. He would be getting mad that I'll be talking to him like that in front of everybody. But it's like, bro, he just knew how to get under your buttons, like underneath your skin, how to push those buttons, and like I'm telling you, bro, AD is really the main reason why I end up even staying as long as I did, because I was just over, bro. Like, he just like the way he just acts sometimes, and I can genuinely say that bro isn't like that all the time. I don't know if it's like he be stressed about some other shit and it just makes him act like that. I don't fucking know, but it had got to a point where like, I'm gonna be honest. At a certain point, I'm like, do he got some type of animosity towards me because of like some other reasons, or like, like I don't know, man. Like,
Well, actually, now that you mention it,
I was trying not to say it, but I'm like,
now that you mention it though,
you feel
like, okay, so because the people want to know, man. What stopped you from bringing up the fact that you had already been with his now wife?
I mean,
Cause me in your shoes, bro. Like I would have crashed out. You know what I'm saying?
and I ain't gonna lie, like, bro, it's not like it didn't like it hadn't crossed my mind before. It's because I'm telling you, he's the type of nigga that will push you to take you out of character like that. It's like, first of all, bro, on some real shit, on some genuine shit, bro. I'm just not even a nigga like that. One,
Yeah.
two, he knew about it.
Right.
It wasn't like he didn't know.
Right.
And like, I didn't fuck her before he fucked her. He fucked her first.
Right,
He was
right,
fucking with her first.
Yeah.
I just got in where I fit in. You feel me? So, and like, like I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna go too deep, but I'm not the only one. You feel me? So like, you feel me? Like, it wasn't like some secret or something like that. Now, I might have been a secret to the office or other people
Sure.
I didn't know. You feel me? But it was like, it was never some huge secret or nothing like that. And it was like, why drag her into this? She never did nothing to me. Me and her have always been cordial. Ever since I have been working with him for years and years after that shit, bro.
Sure.
Like, so it was never no like real reason to bring it up. But when he like, I'm telling you, bro, he pushed my buttons I keep saying push my buttons, yeah. He pushed my buttons a couple times where I definitely wanted to just throw that at him, or at least throw it at him on camera. And I just thought how I'm like, bro, like that just would be weak of me to do. I'm just like, nah, it's not even worth it because I don't even care, and it's not some big mic drop. Like, nigga, we already knew. Like, no offense to her, but it was like, bro, she wasn't the only one. Like,
Right.
niggas was sharing a lot of the same girls,
Yeah,
gang.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like that's like if I would have wifed some girl that he hit before, like,
Right,
you
right.
feel me? Which I probably would never, to be honest. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't some big deal, bro. Niggas was doing drugs and fucking a lot of the same girls, bro. It was really not a big deal back then.
Yeah.
But like I'm telling you, the way that he used to act towards me, I really used to start to think like, bro, are you mad? Like, which would make no sense. Like, why would you be mad about this so long after?
Sure.
But I don't know. I couldn't put a finger on like why he used to be acting such a way towards me, especially because I feel like, you know, all these allegations that came out about him again is like, bro, that's not the first time that shit came out, bro.
Right, right.
Like the first time that it did come out, like, bro, I was probably one of the only people that like
Advocated for him.
and I won't even say advocated because like I didn't know the facts. I didn't know the details. I didn't want to I didn't want to go off face value and just burn a bridge off something I didn't really know the facts to. You feel me?
Yeah.
But it was like me even just sticking by you and continue to be on your platform and on your shit. That's me sticking my neck out for you. You feel me? So again, I thought there was like some sense of I don't know, I guess loyalty or something, but it was like, bro, just the way that he used to act just used to be pissing me off, bro. Like, especially like now that I'm sober and like clear minded, I understand how somebody being flaky, somebody being no call, no show, and shit like that, not being reliable. I understand how frustrating that is because now, as a business owner on my own, like I could see how one person could fuck up the whole rotation and shit.
Yeah,
You
sure.
feel me? So I understood his level of being angry at me, but what I didn't understand was like how judgmental he used to be. Because I'm like, gang, you were older than I am right now,
Right.
doing the same shit that I was doing. But
Right.
you, oh yeah, sure, you had it together a little bit more, but like, nigga, like, you were doing drugs too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was doing drugs with you. You were paying for the drugs.
Right, right, right.
So that shit used to bother me because it was just like, gang, why are you acting like I'm doing some like out of pocket shit when you was doing the same shit with me?
Right, right.
And it's just like, you know, I had to come to terms with all of that shit on my own, and I had to get myself together on my own, and like nobody was gonna be able to whip me into shape. I had to learn that shit on my own. You feel me?
Come on.
Feel me? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I want to wrap up this segment because I think we talked about it enough. But is there a reality where there's some sort of reconciliation? Like, have you guys talked in any type of recent time? And could you see a future where things are like okay at least?
me and Toke, my other co-host on our show, Reconnected, every Thursday 6 p.m.
Come on.
Motherfucking biggest bro ENT on YouTube.
Stop playing.
Feel me? But me and Toke, when like the whole Rico shit first came about, me and Toke were on live and we were just trolling, calling random people, and he was like, call Adam. And I was like, yeah, right, I'm not calling that nigga. And then we're like, fuck it, we're gonna call him. We just called him as a joke, and he immediately started being like, oh yeah, we need you back, and like, to be honest, gang, I just don't, I don't hate that nigga, bro. Look, again, as I gotten older, as I gotten more sober minded, I just like I knew what all this shit was from the beginning, bro. I knew I knew what I signed up for. It's like this shit's all content. This shit ain't no fucking. This ain't no real friendship. This ain't no real loyalty. I got your back ass shit. And it's like, yeah, maybe in certain aspects, maybe it was. You feel me? Because I'm not gonna act like he never did anything for me or like he never helped me out. He for sure did, bro. But it was just like I knew what it was from the beginning, and that's what I was saying earlier. You have to be aware of these dynamics as you go into them, and it's like to think that nigga would spare me over getting the content. Come on, man. It's like, I already know what it was, so I think just I'm not angry about it no more. Niggas gonna make the fucking transmission jokes all day long, man. It's just something I gotta deal with, bro.
Right.
And like at the end of the day, I don't even really give a fuck no more. Like it's just people are either gonna move past it or they gonna keep making the jokes. Whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
But I just feel like it doesn't align with me just as a person anymore. I feel like there's just too much drama, too much weird shit going on. And I just feel like people would look at me like I was crazy if I went back. You feel me?
Yeah, I see that.
I feel like I could lose the people that support me
Right.
by going back. You feel me?
Yeah.
And I just feel like it was a chapter in my life that's now closed. You know, I'm grateful for the audience that came with me from there, from the people that, you know, are still paying attention, for the customers that purchase shit from my brand, don'tcrapout.com, highroller777 on
That's right.
Instagram. You feel me? Like I'm appreciative of all that shit, bro, and I learned a lot by being there, but I don't think it would be conducive for me to go back to be honest.
I get that. I feel that.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't hate that nigga though, bro. I genuinely don't think about that nigga. They might pop up on YouTube or some shit. I might recommend it. That's pretty much it.
yeah.
I just go like I have so much shit that I have to do on a daily basis, bro. Trying to run this business, still
Yeah.
do the music shit, do art, figure out our own shit with this podcast shit.
Yeah.
I will say I missed that part.
Yeah.
I miss just pulling up and just being the
Yeah,
fucking,
I'm
just
bet.
being a nigga sitting here and talking, nigga.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God, I miss that. That's the only thing that I do miss, bro.
Yeah.
And having a team of editors and niggas
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that. God damn, I fucking missed that part. But other than that, bro, I feel like I learned my lesson and like, you know, shit, man. It's time to move forward in life.
Come
I
on.
feel like it was been time to move forward though, but you know, shit happens the way it happens, man. It happens for a reason.
Exactly.
You guys asked me tons of questions about the zombies storyline, so in today's video I took the time to answer 48 of them. Let's get to those questions. Is Misty Dempsey's daughter? Ever since Misty was introduced to the storyline, the zombies community thought that she was Tank Dempsey's daughter. Why would they have thought that? Well, number one, when Dempsey gets the M16 on the moon, he says, "I'm gonna buy one for my 5-year-old." Number two, she talks like he does. For example, she calls zombies meat sacks and slackjaw. Number three, her dad was a Marine just like Dempsey. And number four, in Tiger Totem, Misty said this.
That headshot was for you, Daddy. Hoorah!
Thanks for trolling us, Treyarch. Anywho, the answer is no. Hoorah is a common phrase between Marines, and if Tank really had a child, he or she was most likely born in the 40s, before he was captured. That would mean Misty would have been in her 90s in transit. Maybe she's got some anti-aging cream that nobody knows about? Why are there zombie monkeys in Ascension? In the 1960s, the space race was in full swing, and the Ascension group was sending monkeys on lunar landers into the upper atmosphere to see how long they'd survive. On November 6th, 1963, the Ultimus crew showed up from Kino, and it just so happened that at the same time, the lunar landers that took the monkeys up started falling out of orbit. But why are they zombified? There's no definite answer to that. However, I had a theory that the monkeys were being injected with 115 at Ascension. How were Nova Crawlers made? Man, hearing those things as a kid was pretty frightening. Anyway, to answer your question, the crawlers are a combination of pig DNA, humans, and Nova gas. Since they first showed up in Kino, it's very likely that Group 935 created them. Because they look similar to Keepers, BOA theorized that 935 tried to make their own Keeper after spotting one. This makes sense because a cipher from Drak reads, "We have discovered that there are beings that can travel between dimensions without the aid of teleporters." How does the loop work when Primus gets sent to the Afterplace? You're talking about when Primus gets sent back to the Great War, right? Well, whenever Dr. Minty Fresh sends the crew back through the cycle, their victory during the Great War becomes the end of that cycle, and then they disappear from history until they meet again at Origins in 1918. If you want to fill in the blanks, it sounds like Primus dies, and kind of reincarnates with no memory of the previous loop. Is Shangri-La based off the lost city of Shambhala? The location might be, but I think the story is based off the fictional novel Lost Horizon by James Hilton. The story of Brock and Gary follows a similar plot to Lost Horizons. For example, in BO3 Zombies, after Primus broke the universe because of their dimension hopping, Brock and Gary lost control of their plane and found themselves in the Himalayas near Shangri-La. They didn't land there on purpose like they did in Black Ops 1. In Lost Horizon, the characters also crash landed in the Himalayas and found temples in the exact same place called Shangri-La. The survivors of that plane crash also happened to be British and American, just like Brock and Gary. Speaking of Shang, who invented the baby gun? In Shang, when Richtofen gets the gun, he says,
I knew Maxis was working on such a device, but I had no idea he was successful.
so that means that the inventor of the baby gun is Maxis. Are the witches from Buried Samantha Maxis? If not, who are they? That would be the ghost of Jebediah Brown's mom. How she became that way is actually pretty funny. Jeb and his mom lived in a mining town called Purgatory Point, which we know as the map Buried. Element 115 was first discovered in one of the mines there, but that blue rock has certain zombifying properties. A miner named Clive Farnsworth was down in one of the mines for 10 days and came back with his eyes glowing red. As any zombie would, he walked over to where there was people and came across Jeb's house first. His mom went out to meet Farnsworth, and unfortunately, he ripped her throat out. The next day, Jeb went into the mines to figure out what was going on down there. 5 days later, he came back up thinking he was only down there for a few hours. The night before Jeb left, he had a vision of two angels who told him to build a machine that he thought was an oven or a kiln. This became the Pack-a-Punch, and man was it the talk of the town. People were coming from all over to get their guns packed. On July 20th, 1885, Jeb got drunk and stumbled down to the cemetery to pay his respects to his mom. He dug her up and put her corpse in the Pack-a-Punch machine. Whoosh! She disappeared into thin air. When Jeb got back home, he found a younger version of his mom floating around the house. Legend has it that her ghost still plays the piano to this day. How is Porter? As in Porter's X2 ray gun? Well, he's very dead. But if you're asking who Porter is, he's the inventor of the papped versions of the ray gun and ray gun Mark II. Who made Pack-a-Punch? Good ol' Uncle Jeb. How do the mystery boxes work in Zombies canon? So usually, whoever is in control of the ether at any moment in time decides where and when the box gets sent. For example, in Black Ops 1, Samantha was in control through the MPD, so she was the one who moved the box around. Also, the reason there are weapons from different times in it is because it is infused with element 115. In Origins, Dr. Maxis found that when 115 is brought near the ancient stones, it starts pulling things from other times and dimensions into their reality. So, he theorized that 115 has something to do with the box having futuristic weapons in it. How were the jumpy zombies from Transit made? Oh, the denizens? Did I scare ya? Anywho, here's their story. Broken Arrow was created in 1963 in response to the zombie outbreak at the Pentagon. During the Cold War, Broken Arrow was playing around with the elemental shard and made a couple different creatures they called bios. But as you can see, the experiments went very, very wrong. The facility where all that went down was abandoned, and the research was divided between other Broken Arrow facilities in the US. One of those facilities happened to be Hanford. Clearly, experimentation continued because on April 10th, 2023, they created the Denizens. Since those ugly little things are only found in transit, it's safe to assume that they were made in the labs there. By the way, did you know that in the Black Ops 2 game files, the Denizens were called Screechers? I think that name fits a lot better because that's the sound they make. Why is there a teddy bear in the mystery box? That is Samantha Maxis' teddy bear. She's pictured with it, we see it in her room when we teleport there from Kino, and you can hear her voice when the teddy bear appears in the box. But even after she is no longer in the MPD, the teddy bear still appears. That's because the teddy bear is an omen of bad luck. And that makes sense, the mystery box is based around luck. So I guess when the teddy bear appears, it means you're out of luck. What do the different zombie eye colors mean across different maps? The zombies' eye colors usually tell you who's controlling them at that moment in time. This isn't always true though. So the yellow eyes mean Samantha is in control, the orange eyes mean Dr. Maxis is, blue is Dr. Richtofen, red is the Shadow Man, and white is Cornelius Purnell, aka the Avogadro. Tell us the story of the Mexican and his spleen. Alright, gather round children. This is the tale of the Mexican and his spleen. There once was a Mexican spy named Pablo Marinus who was captured at Griffin Castle by Group 935. There they kept him prisoner and pumped his veins full of 115. As 935 was performing these experiments, Pablo had visions of being a knight and fighting in a great battle against demon-like creatures. This great battle he's referring to is the Great War. He goes on to say, at one point it appears I am doomed, trapped in the tentacles of a great three-headed beast, when suddenly 4 knights decimated with magical elemental staves, saving me from certain death. Sometime later, Group 935 transferred him to Siberia where he would undergo more experiments carried out by Richtofen. He, along with Takio and Nikolai, became one of Richtofen's first test subjects in his mind control experiments. Unfortunately, Richtofen killed him while performing an operation where he removed Pablo's spleen. Fun fact, did you know a monkey tried to steal Pablo's spleen from Richtofen? There's more to Pablo's story, but let's save that for a character video. What did Beware of the Six mean in Kino? People used to think it was mentioning the dog rounds since they usually show up on round 6, and because Fluffy is test subject number 6. However, this could also mean the Nova 6 crawlers. Here's why. First, the Nova 6 crawlers first appeared in Kino der Toten, and second, 6 is in the name, Nova 6. There never was any explanation or any intel about that warning, so all we can do is theorize. Tell us about the Shadow Man's origin to present day. In the beginning of the Ether story, when there were just the Keepers and the Ether, two Keepers called Monty and the Shadow Man used to be best buds. I'll let Monty explain the rest.
I knew a bloke, and I'm talking way, way, way back. He was the sweetest, most charming individual you could ever wish to meet. It was funny too. We used to have such a good old laugh together. Honestly, my sides hurt thinking about it. He was my friend. He was my best friend. And then the Apothicons got hold of him. Since then, he's pretty much acted as their agent, zipping around the galaxy.
Again, I don't want to give you too much information because I do want to save his story for a dedicated character video. What is Russman's backstory? Before Russman met the rest of the Victus crew in transit, he was an employee at Broken Arrow. During the Cold War, he was working at a facility where Broken Arrow was testing the elemental shard on animals. The results of these tests were these creatures called bios. On June 4th, 1986, one of the bios escaped its containment and began killing the employees. Luckily, Russman escaped. Next time we hear about him is on July 6, 2025, when he and George Barkley went to Camp Edward to send a sample of the Avogadro to Hanford, Washington. Bear in mind that they didn't actually send the Avogadro to Hanford, just a sample. That part doesn't happen until Ultimus and Primus arrive later. Anywho, when the outbreak happened later that year, Broken Arrow was dissolved and Russman was out of a job, forced to walk the earth homeless. Then he stole the transit bus, met Stuhlinger, and they both met Marlton and Misty at the diner. Who made the ray gun? That would be Dr. Maxis. This next one was probably the most asked question I've gotten, but who is the Panzer? Thanks to Pablo Marinus' diary, Element 115 was discovered at the Origins dig site in France in 1917. But pickaxes and shovels weren't gonna cut it if they wanted to go deep enough to find the blue stuff. Come on guys, this isn't Minecraft. So Richtofen came up with a plan to make robotic suits. He ended up building two different suits, one for digging and one to protect Group 935. The Panzer for digging is the one in Origins. The suit meant for protection is the one that was in Der Eisendrache. The Panzer suit for digging was successful and Richtofen decided to mass produce it. But who's inside? Just random soldiers that got infected while using the suit to pull up 115 from the dig site? What's the story behind Dempsey's girlfriend? Her name is Phoebe. After McCain was kind of put back together inside an ADAM unit in Alpha Omega, Ultimus Dempsey wanted to verify it really was Peter McCain. Dempsey says,
Okay, let's keep it cryptic. Me and Phoebe. Sum it up in 3 words. I forgive you.
To me, it sounds like McCain was in love with a girl named Phoebe, and Dempsey got her instead. Why and how are there weapon outlines on the walls? So when Maxis had Primus open a portal to Agartha and Origins, it kind of caused rifts to open up across the multiverse. Apparently that causes things to be really screwy in the universe, and as a result, Dr. Monty felt the need to step in. But to allow humanity to keep their free will, he would give a nudge here and there across time and space. The chalk drawings, perk machines, gumball machines, mystery box, and the power-ups were all his ideas. Why did the zombies' eye colors change in Nuketown on round 25? The zombies' eyes go from yellow to blue on round 25 because Nuketown takes place at the same time that Richtofen switches bodies with Samantha on the moon. Who's in the Nuketown bunker and why is he there? The who is Marlton, and here's the why. On April 10th, 1965, Broken Arrow made robots called ADAM units that were meant to help people with tasks like everyday house chores, raising a child, tax preparation, and etc. I definitely wouldn't let any one of those things come near my child. Anyway, there was a problem with these robots. Broken Arrow was using the elemental shard to charge them, and that caused them to feel emotions and become self-aware. When Broken Arrow realized this, they started deploying the robots as soldiers in war. This was a project they called Project Toy Soldier. Since the robots felt emotions, they also felt fear. They didn't want to die, so they revolted against their inventors. 60 years later, in 2025, Marlton found out about this through some internet forums and snuck into Camp Edward to investigate and hopefully expose the program. The mannequins turned on him and he locked himself in the bunker. In what order should I play the games to get the full chronological story? The games are in order, it's just that some of the maps aren't. I'm talking about Classified, Shadows, Mob of the Dead, and Blood of the Dead. I found this Reddit post by Golem III that lists out all the maps in chronological order. Pause the video if you need to. I always wondered this, who made the monkey bomb? You have good old Ricky Toffin to thank for those. They're made of real monkeys who were stuffed right as they died. Who invented Juggernog? Group 935 did, but Dr. Monty nudged them to make perks like Juggernog, Quick Revive, and Speed Cola. Wasn't Sam's dog pregnant when it was teleported? Yes, sir. Before Fluffy became a test subject, Dr. Maxis gave her to Samantha and warned her to be careful with the dog because she's gonna have puppies. That's why the dogs keep on coming. Who was the first person to discover element 115? In the undocumented dimension, it would be whoever was the first to discover it in the mines at Purgatory Point in the late 1800s. In the documented dimension, I guess Pablo found it first since he was the only one to write about it back in the 1300s. What's the story behind Leroy? Everybody calls that big guy from Buried Leroy. I have no clue how that started, but I guess his overalls make him look like a Leroy. His real name is Arthur, and he served the Wolf King during the Great War, back in the 13th century. Arthur buried the Wolf King's bones at Castle Dreisendrach, the same bones that are used to get the wolf bow. After burying the bones, Arthur was teleported to Buried due to temporal rifts. Element 115 tends to mess with things in that way. What's the story behind the guy in the Black Ops 1 menu? There's no backstory, it was just something cool to have in the start menu, and I really wish Treyarch would go back to giving us cool little details like that. How does Dr. Monty die? Dr. Monty never actually died. When Primus Nikolai destroyed the summoning key at the end of Tagger Toten, Dr. Monty and Agartha were plunged into the Dark Ether. So there could be a chance that he's still alive in the Dark Ether, but just very twisted and might not even be recognizable anymore. Give me your opinion of the zombies YouTuber Tim Hansen. Tim Hansen seems like a really great guy, and he's actually one of my inspirations for starting a zombies channel, along with Noah and Lex. They're all great people, great YouTubers, and maybe someday I'll get a chance to record with them. Who made the first zombie? Zombies were always around since 115 was discovered. Clive Farnsworth was the first recorded zombie. He interacted with the 115 that was found in the mines at Purgatory Point and killed the Pap inventor's mom. But the first zombie made by human hands was made by Dr. Maxis at Derice. Why was Group 935 created? To study 115 and improve the human condition, but we all know how that ended. Is Zombies Chronicles a different timeline? Nah, it was just for nostalgia. However, there is a possibility that Chronicles was in a fractured timeline. Noct and Verruckt have radios where Monty describes what went down at each of those locations. At the end of them, Monty says,
"You weren't there either, but then you were."
do with that what you will, but I'm sticking with it was just for nostalgia. What are the least fun and most fun wonder weapons? The wonder weapon that's the least fun to use is the Ray Gun Mark I. It's just not fun to get it anymore, and sure, it felt amazing to get the ray gun in World at War and Black Ops 1 because it was new and rare, but now it just won't die. The wonder weapons I had the most fun with, and I said weapons with an S because 3 of them are tied in my mind, are the Shrink Ray, Thunder Gun, and Sliquifire. I picked these 3 because they made me laugh every time I used them. Take the 3179 JGB 215 for example. The fact that you can kick zombies? What? And the sound they made the kicking 10 times better. Moving on to the Thunder Gun, when I first played with it, making zombies ragdoll through the air made my 14-year-old self giggle every time I pulled the trigger. Same case with the Sliquifire, it's just so funny to use. What's your favorite map and character in zombies? My favorite map has to be Buried. The Ray Gun Mark II was introduced, being able to do the chalk outlines was awesome, and that witch in Jeb Brown's house, or should I say his mom, she gave me chills every time I saw her. To this day, the hairs on the back of my neck stand straight up when I enter that house. My favorite character though has to be Ultimus Pacquiao. His quotes in Kino, even though they were meant to be humorous, seemed very wise. Who was Samantha's mom? I don't really know because there's no info on her, but what I do know is that she died giving birth to Samantha. Can you please do the story of Town and Farm? Sure. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful sunny town in Hanford, Washington called Town. And let me tell you, this town was beautiful. That was until the moon rockets hit. Now it's become the wasteland that you see today in transit. Same thing happened with Farm. What's an MPD? MPD stands for Moon Pyramid Device. How ironic. The corrupted keepers, later known as the Apothicons, made the MPD a long time ago when they knew they were going to lose the war against their keeper brethren. It gives whoever is in it control over the zombies, the mystery box, and the drops. Richtofen teleported to the moon by accident while testing his teleporter in 1940. The MPD was there and he touched it, resulting in him going mad with the voices of the Apothicons, including the Shadowmans. Who are the Illuminati? What is their purpose in the story, and when were they mentioned? Ever heard this sound and seen this symbol? Well, actually that sound is from X-Files, but this is how people usually present it. They're a secret organization that people supposedly believe controls the media, the world's governments, and money. Before Ultimus Richtofen joined Group 935, he was actually in the Illuminati. Then Dr. Maxis invited him to join Group 935, but he only said yes because he was acting on behalf of the Illuminati. But after losing his mind in 1940, he renounced his membership in the order. They weren't mentioned much, but you can find their symbols and coded messages in maps like Verruckt, Kino, 5, and even Ascension. They even helped Primus Richtofen build the lab under Alcatraz. In the Firebase Z Easter egg, why did Maxis have Monte's scarf and Takio's sword? So there was speculation that when Sam was in the Dark Ether, she was able to summon that stuff to help her survive in there, but there isn't any proof or intel of any of that. So the only answer I can give you is that Treyarch was just teasing us with that. How was the Thunder Gun made? I definitely can't tell you about the science behind it, but I can tell you how the Russians got their hands on it and who made it. So the story goes that when World War II ended, Group 935 disbanded. The scientists were left without jobs, and most of the facilities were overrun by zombies. Richtofen, being the benevolent person that he is, split 935's gadgets and scientists between Russia and America. One of the things the Russians got was a blueprint for the Thunder Gun, and Gersh was the scientist responsible for building it at Ascension. What's the difference between the Ether and Dark Ether? The Ether is basically everything above creation. It's a place that can't be detected or sensed. Monty mentioned in a wisp on Revelations that it isn't a place people go to when they die, and it's definitely not a place meant for humans. Now, the Dark Ether is the opposite. It's a dark energy below creation that corrupts and gobbles up everything it touches. Basically like the Upside Down from Stranger Things. It's responsible for corrupting a handful of keepers and turning them into Apothicons, and it's also where Element 115 comes from. What happened in Noctur and Totemi? So Noctur's a peculiar case because there wasn't an official crew yet and the characters didn't have names. But here's what went down. On the fateful summer night of June 4th, 1945, 4 unnamed Allied soldiers were flying back to base when their plane stalled over an abandoned airfield. The plane crashed into some Nazi trucks that were delivering Element 115 and zombies to a Group 935 facility, possibly Derice. Anywho, the soldiers in that plane survived the crash, but unfortunately, so did the zombies. They held out for as long as they could until the airfield was overrun. Through the fog, the soldiers saw a nearby bunker and ran into it, hoping they could survive the night. Out of nowhere, weapons started appearing on the walls. Was some unseen entity looking out for them, or was this part of some twisted game? Regardless, they didn't survive for very long. Who made the bows in Derice Track? So there's no intel, radio, or cipher that explains who made the bows, but we can guess. Johnny J25 pointed out that there are a lot of black sun symbols and other things relating to the keepers around the area where the upgrade rituals are done. This could indicate that the bow was made by the keepers, and the name of the bow, Wrath of the Ancients, could be a reference to Primus, because in Origins, Samantha refers to Primus as the Ancients. So maybe that means the keepers made the bows for Primus to use. How did Victus get to Blood of the Dead? At the end of Buried, we discovered that Victus activated all 3 pylons in Maxis' favor. One in Transit, one in Die Rise, and the last one in Buried. But they were bamboozled. Maxis said that they were helping him heal the Earth from the destruction of the moon rockets, but really, he just wanted to open the gateway to Agartha. He opened the gateway, and in turn, the Earth was destroyed. He also went back in time to 2025 and pulled Samantha out of Richtofen's body and put Richtofen's soul in a zombie. Now Victus was left to roam the Earth on their own, and undead Richtofen kept chasing them. Why, you may ask? That's because undead Richtofen was tasked by Primus Richtofen with getting Victus's blood. Sometime later, Primus Richtofen sent Victus on a quest to find the Chronorium. So he opened up a rift for the crew, teleporting them to a place called Base Zero, in a dimension that was known as the Empty Earth. But in order to have access to the base, their blood samples needed to be collected. So they hopped in some strange machine and let it take their blood. Then once inside the base, the Victus crew collected the Chronorium and took another rift to the lab under Alcatraz. When they got there, Primus Richtofen was there to greet Victus with arms open wide. Victus gave him the book, and then he asked them, "Do you want to live?" That's definitely not a strange question. Of course, their answer was yes, but they didn't fully trust him. So Richtofen was like, "I got some errands to run, but you make your decision, and when I get back, tell me what you want to do." The rift took Richtofen to the empty earth, where he met up with undead Richtofen, who handed in the blood vials of Victus. Then, Primus Richtofen time traveled to Alcatraz when the Mob of the Dead crew was there, got their blood samples, and gave 2 of those vials to his past self and origins. When he got back, he asked Victus if they made a decision. They decided that they did want to live, but not in a constant state of running and trying to survive. So he offered to keep them in stasis until the quote-unquote final world arrives. The crew climbed in, and then we get the Blood of the Dead cutscene. However, the Blood of the Dead cutscene is in a broken cycle, and the comic shows what happened in Blood during the normal cycle. The comic says Primus arrived right on time, and in Blood of the Dead, Richtofen says, "You're late. Who is the astronaut on the moon?" The astronaut on the moon is actually one of 5 human test subjects that Dr. Schuster sent to Griffin Station in 1963. His name is Private Hastings. In 1945, after Group 935 broke up and the scientists disappeared, Richtofen cut a deal with the Soviets and Americans, handing 935 scientists and their research over to both countries. Schuster was sent to the Americans and worked on teleportation for them at the Pentagon. He made a teleporter for them that was able to send people from the Pentagon to Groom Lake. But Richtofen told the Americans and Soviets about Griffin Station back in 1945. So, of course, they wanted to go to the moon. So the Americans tasked Schuster with creating a teleporter that would take them to Griffin Station. However, the teleporter was difficult to control. If the calculations weren't correct, a person would end up on the moon, but too far into the future. Schuster did his last test trial on August 3rd, 1963, the date when he put Private Hastings on the teleporter platform. He knew that Private Hastings was sent to the future when communication couldn't be established. So the astronaut is most likely Private Hastings as a zombie. Because, you know, the whole 115 turns everyone into zombies thing.
Did the new Zombies storyline not interest you? Did you skip out on Cold War, Vanguard, or NWZ but want to be fully up to date with Black Ops 6? Do you just love storyline videos? Well, get ready for absolutely everything you need to know about the Call of Duty Black Ops Zombies storyline. In the beginning, there was only the Ether and the Keepers. The Keepers were a race of godlike creatures that existed inside of the Ether, a place beyond time and space. 2 Keepers in particular ruled above all, the Shadow Man and Dr. Monty. In this world, there were also objects of great celestial power, such as the Summoning Key, used to manipulate the Ether. Other objects include the Elemental Shards, the Vril device, and the Chronorium. Dr. Monty used the Summoning Key to create Agartha, a dimension similar to Heaven, a perfect world. At some point, the Keepers discovered a way to travel to new dimensions, including the Dark Ether. Similar to matter and antimatter, the Dark Ether was a dark mirror dimension for all of matter. Time runs differently in the Dark Ether, about 30 times faster. This place was filled with a corrupting energy that mutated some of the Keepers into a new race called Apothecons. The Shadow Man betrayed Dr. Monty and took control of these new Apothecons and declared war on the Keepers. The war raged on, but eventually the Apothecons lost and were banished to the Dark Ether. Over eons they tried to escape, until learning that Earth, and many timeline variants of Earth, had a way back to Agartha. They sent meteors containing element 115, a corrupting dark ether element, to these Earths, and hoped that eventually, war and the human desire for power would eventually open the gateway back to Agartha. And they were right. The Apothicons returned during the late 13th century, so the Keepers and the humans had to team together to successfully banish them back to the dark ether. This is known as the Great War. 4 humans use staves of power to defeat them, and are known henceforth as Primus. They and the entire war are then forgotten, lost to time. Many years pass, and history continues. During the old American West, a man creates plans for an object called the Agarthan device. However, it needs 3 ingredients that he does not have: an elemental shard, the blood of an elder being, and the Vril device, the latter of which he creates. We then skip to World War II, where each major nation in the conflict has access to element 115. Germany and Japan both experiment with 115 on prisoners of war. The German experiments are led by Ludwig Maxis and Edward Richthofen, where they try and teleport matter, but have so far, accidentally, created undead, uncontrollable zombies. They also funded this by creating 115-based weapons for the German army called Wonder Weapons. Many things happen during this time, but the important part is that Richthofen goes mad due to contact with the 115. Ludwig Maxis has a daughter, Samantha, and a dog named Fluffy, which Richthofen and Maxis experiment on and create, accidentally, a hellhound. Samantha walks in and tries to protect her dog, and Richthofen betrays Maxis by teleporting both of them, assuming that they both die. Samantha ends up on the German moon base and finds an Agarthan machine called the MPD, and enters, taking control of all the zombies. Ludwig Maxis' mind is lost within another dimension, the Crazy Place. While experimenting on live prisoners on a German base in Siberia, Richthofen discovers and begins investigating the elemental shard. With help from the voices in his head, which include the Shadow Man, he imbues the shard with the souls of 3 prisoners. Realizing it isn't enough, he also imbues his own soul too. Dr. Monty, realizing that the Shadow Man is seeking to escape, subliminally pushes scientists in Germany to create various drinks that cause various different effects. These are then known as Perca-Colas. He also pushes for the invention known as the Pack-a-Punch machine, and scatters magical chalk outlines as well as a weapon-producing mystery box around the world. These 3 prisoners of war, who had had their memories partially wiped, help Richthofen by travelling around the world using the mostly complete teleporter to places such as Russia, Shangri-La, Siberia again, and ultimately the German moon base. The 3 are Takio from Japan, Nikolai from Russia, and American Dempsey. This group of 4 are known as Ultimus. Richthofen uses the Vril device he found earlier in Siberia to switch places with Samantha and takes control of the zombies. Their eyes turn from yellow to blue. Ludwig Maxis, who had learnt to harness electricity in the Crazy Place, convinces Ultimus to help stop Edward, but betrays them and sends 3 rockets to Earth, which explode and shatter the planet into pieces. Ultimus then teleport back to Earth and are imprisoned by American soldiers. Meanwhile, on Earth, a group of 4 survivors nicknamed Victus fight off Richthofen's undead army. They travel around the world and help Maxis, who speaks to them through electronic signals. One of the crew, Stuhlinger, can hear Richthofen due to eating zombie flesh. Eventually, with Maxis' help, Victus sends Richthofen's soul into the body of the zombies, forever stuck as he dies and dies again. Ludwig Maxis, now in full control, takes Samantha's soul from Richthofen's original body and takes her to Agartha, and then destroys the Earth. Samantha, safe in Agartha, sees what her father has become. In a different universe, 4 mobsters are locked up in Alcatraz as they plan an escape, but are caught in a time loop during a zombie outbreak. In every cycle, 3 of the mobsters learn that the other snitched and kill him before being sent to the electric chair or killed in the outbreak. Eventually, the cycle breaks when the snitch, Al Arlington, kills the others and his soul is freed. In the same timeline, where the Great War in the 13th century was documented, alternate versions of the Ultimus crew meet in France during World War I. Element 115 and the 4 Staffs of Power are unearthed, and a localized zombie outbreak occurs in France. Richtofen and Maxis, who are friends in this dimension, fight off the zombies before Maxis is bitten, and Richtofen keeps him alive by operating on him and saving his brain. Alternate versions of Nikolai, Takio, Dempsey, and Richtofen all meet for the first time. The 4 hear Samantha Maxis, now cleansed of her madness, calling to them in their heads, and follow her advice to save this new, nicer Ludwig Maxis, who is sent to Agartha using portals to the Crazy Place. Once arrived in Agartha, Maxis then gains the power to teleport others across different dimensions. After the outbreak, Samantha, playing with toy zombies, argues with a child version of Richtofen called Eddie about the colour of the zombies' eyes, as Maxis orders them to come down to the basement. Richtofen uses Maxis' power to find his Ultimus zombie version, and instructs him to bring Victus, now walking the empty earth, to the Chronorium, and find the blood vials. The Chronorium is a book that details the past and future. Teleporting them back to Alcatraz, he then puts them in stasis and hands the vial to a future version of himself. Meanwhile, in the same dimension, 4 residents of Morgue City unknowingly help the Shadow Man and have to imprison him inside of the summoning key. Just before the Keepers can take the key from them, Maxis teleports Richtofen there to steal it. They are unaware of who is inside.
Thank you and goodbye.
Richtofen, Dempsey, Nikolai, and Takio then teleport throughout the multiverse to find and kill alternate versions of themselves and absorb their souls into the summoning key. Richtofen kills his Ultimus past self just after he teleports Ludwig and Samantha in the original timeline, creating a splinter universe called a Fracture. He realizes this soul is not pure, so travels alone to Dimension 2210 and kills an orphaned version of himself, which he then sends to Agartha to befriend Samantha. Richtofen is following instructions in the Chronorium in how to save the universe. The Chronorium is a book that details the past and the future. This is also how he knows to create a lab underneath of Alcatraz Island. They make a quick stop at Alcatraz after collecting Richtofen, Dempsey, and Nikolai's souls, and pick up 4 vials of each of the gangsters' blood. This is done by interacting with a past version of himself to hand off the vials. They also meet Maxis' love interest, Sophia, a science officer who, after being infected, was transferred into an AI by Maxis. After collecting Nikolai's soul, the last one needed, Dr. Monty introduces himself to them and invites them to Agartha. In Agartha, child versions of the main 4 characters, plus Samantha Maxis, live with the now restored Ludwig Maxis in a house. These children are uncorrupted souls. Dr. Monty's plan is to create a new, perfect world in Agartha, but needs the souls to do it. One night, Ludwig hears the summoning key whispering to him, and inadvertently releases the trapped Shadow Man, who traps him in the summoning key and begins to destroy the house. He also opens a portal to the Dark Ether, letting the Apothecans spill in. With the help of Sophia and Dr. Monty, Richtofen, Dempsey, Nikolai, and Takio destroy the Shadow Man. Sophia, and a remnant of Maxis in the summoning key, sacrifice themselves to close the portal to the Dark Ether, saving Agartha and resetting the universe. Dr. Monty questions the 4 on why they have not yet disappeared, and notices the blood vials, now empty. The 4 had drunk the blood, which had belonged to the mobsters within their own time loop, stopping their fading from existence. Dr. Monty, tempted to wipe them from existence, instead allows them to complete the loop by sending them to the late 13th century, where they help the Keepers in the war against the Apothecons using Staves of Power, and are named Primus. This main cycle repeats forever. Until, during Primus's trip to Alcatraz to pick up the blood vials, the Chronorium's words change due to Al Arlington killing the other mobsters and breaking the cycle. Another version of Richtofen meets Primus Richtofen for the handover. He also tells current Richtofen to read the Chronorium again, as it has changed. Primus Richtofen realizes he must sacrifice himself. The Warden destroys their usual portal. With help from the spirits of the four mobsters, current Primus Richtofen hooks himself to a bloodletting machine to release all the souls of Alcatraz. This also opens a cryopod containing a version of Richtofen from after he was sent back to the Great War. He uses a crystal from his Staff of Power to break the prison cycle. This version of Richtofen lets current Richtofen bleed to death and destroys the blood vials, now useless with the time loop gone. The three members of Primus and future Richtofen then leave, but before this, Richtofen gives up the Chronorium to Nikolai, as he doesn't have the strength to do what must be done. Nikolai is the only member to still have their soul, and because they never sent the others to Agatha, only Eddie and Samantha remain at the house with Monty. Primus head to the American prison holding Ultimus, just back from the moon, and tell them they need to work together to avert Dr. Monty's control of the universe and end the cycle. The 8 of them find the elemental shard, but are radioed by Maxis that they are too late, and Monty kills him in front of the child versions of Richtofen and Samantha, but does manage to teleport them out to Primus and Ultimus. Samantha, still imbued with powers from her time in the MPD, goes berserk and swears vengeance on Dr. Monty. Joined by zombie Richtofen, the 11 of them head to a forest and toast to their futures once they defeat Monty. They awaken Victus from stasis and instruct them to go to Siberia. Once there, they finally build the Agarthan device, the plans of which have been laid for a millennia. Finally having the 3 ingredients for it, they send it to Nikolai. However, Primus Nikolai poisons the other members of Primus and Ultimus, leaving just the kids, himself, and zombie Richtofen. Using it, he destroys the summoning key, bringing about the end of creation, as all of time and space is sucked into the dark ether. The reason for all this, it is revealed, is that when Ultimus Richtofen imbued the elemental shard with the souls of the Ultimus crew, he linked the 4, and all versions of them, with the ether, trapping them in a cycle of never-ending chaos. Nikolai, having read the pages of the Chronorium, knew this was the only way to end the cycle. Nikolai then shoots zombie Richtofen, and then tells Samantha to kill him. She tells Eddie to look away. Creation begins to disappear, including Victus. A light appears, and Samantha and Eddie, the only 2 remaining people, perfect souls, walk into the light of the new, singular, uncorrupted, and keeper-free world.
Reach for what tonight.
Well, that brings us to the halfway point of this story. Whether you've watched it all so far or skipped ahead, thank you so much for watching. Please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more zombies content coming very, very soon. Anyway, onwards to the Dark Ether story, starting with... Vanguard Zombies.
Professor, it is time to bid your toy soldiers auf Wiedersehen.
In this new world, history progressed as normal. No Great War, no keepers or apothecons, just the Call of Duty campaign history as we know it, with Mason, Woods, Price, and Soap. However, the Dark Ether still remained, dormant, a corrupted mirror dimension. The Dark Ether was now ruled by Elder Gods, entities of near infinite power that had different personalities. For example, Cortifex was an evil tyrant, hell-bent on conquering and destruction, while Nauticus was, while still being a conqueror, pro-democracy. These gods fought in the Nether Wars, an ongoing fight between Cortifex and the anti-Cortifex gods. Within the Dark Ether, a great stone being, whose origins are so distant they are unknown, known as the Construct, existed. This monolith could give some of its infinite power to someone once it deems them worthy. The Nether Wars were fought over this construct. The being who is given this power is known as the Archon. Previous Archons have eradicated entire Dark Ether species, destroyed the Dark Ether moon into shards, and more. Each of the gods were linked with an artifact on Earth, but while they could use their powers to see into the world, they were stuck inside of the Dark Ether. During World War II, these artifacts were collected by a man named von List, a German commander. An old colleague of von List, a demonologist known as Gabriel Kraft, abandoned the work once he saw von List's plans and the artifact's potential power. At this time, the Germans created Project Endstation, a facility in Poland to hold Die Maschine, a cyclotron that was intended to help give Germany access to nuclear energy, but instead malfunctioned and unintentionally punched a hole through reality, opening dimensional portals to the Dark Ether. These new rifts restore the connection between the objects, the Dark Ether, and their associated god, becoming active. Cortifex whispers to von List through his object, and manipulates him into touching it. He and Cortifex then link, giving von List the powers over the dead. He then creates an army of undead soldiers that Germany lost during the war effort so far. This relationship, while seemingly mutually beneficial, is closer to a parasitic relationship, as Cortifex whispers false promises to von List. Gabriel Kraft informs the Vanguard Special Forces of von List's new powers and plans to wipe out the Allies. This Special Forces group also bond with other artifacts and gain special abilities, while also being now helped by gods fighting against Cortifex. Eventually, once Cortifex had gained enough strength, he betrayed von List and travelled to the Construct, but was denied its power because it hadn't completed the Construct's trials. During this, Kraft finds and kills von List. Cortifex completes the trials and is then deemed worthy by the Construct and becomes the Archon. The Vanguard team work with the other gods to destroy him, and as the Construct vanishes, a defeated Cortifex falls into the darkest depths of the Dark Ether. It is worth noting that Gabriel Kraft also mentions that a hero of his was Alistair Rhodes, an amateur demonologist and potentially a main character in the Black Ops 4 Chaos storyline. While this may simply be a small reference, this may be important later down the line in Black Ops 6 and beyond. Back in Poland, Project Endstation staff are locked inside the facility and corrupted by the Dark Ether. It is found by the Russians, and they send in a man named Kazimir Zykov to deactivate the machine and lock him inside. They then abandon the facility. 39 years later, in the midst of the Cold War, the Russian science division known as the Omega Group enter the station in hope of finding secret weapons, and accidentally wake up the dormant zombie horde that had once been the staff. This also causes smaller dimensional tears to appear around the world. Samantha Maxis, one of the only two survivors of the previous universe, grows up in West Germany. She joins the intelligence agency for Germany and finds herself in Iran during the Islamic Revolution of 1979, where she is saved and extracted out by Grigory Weaver. At some point after this, Weaver and Maxis are tasked with a not yet known mission. During this mission, Weaver tries to cover his tracks by burning down a house, but is unaware that a little boy is still inside, and he burns to death. He tearfully tells Maxis that the boy was meant to be with his mother, and not at the house. Later, she learns of certain outbreak zones around the world. She remembers almost nothing of her childhood traumas from before the Universal Reset, but reaches out to Weaver anyway, as she fears her intelligence agency is being controlled by the Omega Group. Weaver, having come straight from losing his eye in the events of Black Ops 1's campaign, agrees to help after seeing a video from Project N Station. Weaver sends Requiem, an American team looking into the outbreaks, to Poland, and there they learn of Omega Group's plans to use the Dark Ether to win the Cold War. At the facility, decaying and time-altered versions of the Perca-Colas, Pack-a-Punch machine, and Mystery Box are found. These are all remnants of the old universe. They destroy the facility with the help of Orlov, an Omega Group member who had been mutated into a radioactive zombie. He sacrifices himself. Samantha Maxis then makes her way to Vietnam, where she has heard of another outbreak at a firebase. She goes to meet with an undercover Omega Group agent called Ravenov. She is found and kept captive by an American traitor named Peck, working for the Omega Group. After continual torture, Samantha doesn't break, so she is thrown into a Dark Ether portal. Requiem's strike team arrive, and with Ravenov's help, drug Peck into telling them where Samantha is, and reopen the portal. Samantha, who had only been in there for 2 Earth days, was in there for almost 2 Dark Ether months. She also returns with purple eyes. Before they can escape, a giant corrupted elder god named the Order appears and tries to stop them. The strike team destroy it, sending it back to the Dark Ether. Once they leave, Requiem's director forces Maxis to enter quarantine after her time in the Dark Ether. She is questioned by the same members of Requiem overseeing the destruction of Project N Station. They are Major Carver, an ex-Defense Department member who was hand-picked by the director of Requiem as head of containment. Oscar Strauss, an ex-Project N Station researcher whose research led to the development of the Wunderwaffe DG-2 for von List. He later defected at the end of World War II. And Elizabeth Gray, head of Requiem's Unnatural Sciences. Peck, who is still alive and at the firebase, has his eye removed by Omega Group's leader, Kravchenko, for his failure. Over the next few months, more outbreaks occur in the Ural Mountains, and Requiem send the strike team to deal with them. The first task is to meet with Ravenov, who is worried about the Dark Ether crystals appearing in the outbreak zones. These crystals are also forming entities called Tempests, Dark Ether crystals made sentient and electrical. Using a radio in her quarantined room, Samantha Maxis contacts the team and Ravenov and discover Omega Group want to fire reality inversion warheads to the west, which would turn the target area into its Dark Ether counterpart. After defeating a giant tempest called Legion, the missiles are diverted away into the middle of the Philippine Sea. Around this time, Weaver gifts Maxis a Rottweiler puppy named Not So Fluffy. She is allowed to walk it twice a day. The second task in the Ural Mountains is to locate and extract defecting Omega Group scientists. During this, Requiem have to use Mr. Peaks, a somewhat sentient teddy bear found in outbreak zones and mystery boxes, to move through the Ethereum gas surrounding the outbreak zone. They realize far too late that the scientists have already been killed, and who they thought they had been speaking to was actually the Omega Group. Although they are able to successfully defeat another order, Kravchenko imprisons them and takes them to Berlin. Included in these prisoners is Raptor 1, a pilot who has been dropping off and exfilling the strike team from the outbreak zones. During this time, Samantha Maxis and Elizabeth Gray begin to grow closer and form a romantic relationship. Suddenly moved into isolation, Maxis is interrogated and abused by the director of Requiem. He wants to harness her regained powers that have started to reactivate since being in the Dark Ether. Weaver promises Sam that he will take care of Notso. The director threatens to have Weaver disappear if Sam cannot produce any powers. This causes her to inadvertently shatter some glass with her mind. The imprisoned strike team are propositioned by Kravchenko to help him defeat a rogue Omega Group scientist called Valentina, who has her eyes on world domination. She was the daughter of the lead scientist at Project N Station. Kravchenko also confirmed that they are racing to free a man who had been stuck in the Dark Ether for years, Kazimir Zykov, the soldier sent in to turn off the cyclotron at Project N Station. Valentina had been influenced her whole life by a voice sounding like her father's after he had died. She merges with the Dark Ether, but is defeated, finding out that the voice was actually one of an elder god known as the Forsaken, manipulating her. Kravchenko reveals that Omega Group want to contain and control the Forsaken to use against the West. With the help of a psychopathic robot called Klaus, the outbreak is closed, but Klaus was left inside of the Dark Ether. Strike Team and Raptor 1 are betrayed by Kravchenko, who goes back on their deal, but a portal opens on a roof, and as they jump through, they see Maxis as she uses her powers to teleport them. After her powers are used, the director notes that she now presents a problem that must be dealt with. He also states that Project Janus can now proceed. Months later, the director agrees to let Sam help with Requiem's final mission in Russia, at a training facility. She is not, however, allowed to rejoin the team at this time. Gray and Maxis confirm their feelings for each other when saying goodbye. It is likely around this time where Samantha Maxis' DNA is obtained and frozen for later use. As the Requiem strike team, helped by Ravenov, infiltrate the facility, Peck and Kravchenko beat them to it and have created a portal made to the specifications of Zykov's requests. Zykov comes through the portal and immediately transforms into the Elder God the Forsaken. Zykov had been driven mad by his almost 400 years in the Dark Ether and survived by eating the undead, Dark Ether materials, and eventually all other Elder Gods and Old Ones, absorbing their powers. This likely includes the Vanguard Gods, although Cortifex is potentially still in the depths of the Dark Ether. The Forsaken begins to destroy everything, but is stopped by Maxis, who teleports in and begins to fend off the attack. While trying to fend off the zombies, Peck and Kravchenko are caught in an explosion, to which they are considered dead.
Watch where you're shooting! The gaslight!
The strike team manage to weaken the Forsaken enough for Sam to damage it, which she does by absorbing zombie souls. The Forsaken gives the strike team a vision of the future, showing Strauss, Gray, Carver, and Peck all killed on the floor, with the words, "No one escapes alive," over some graffiti of a woman with powers. Maxis interrupts this vision and deals the final blow by opening a portal inside of the Forsaken and flying in herself, trapping her back inside of the Dark Ether. The Forsaken and the portal disintegrate and are sucked into the containment device created by the Omega Group, looking very similar to Sophia from the original timeline. The containment device is flown away to Liberty Falls, a research station run by Project Janus. The director, happy with the outcome, arrests the strike team and sends them to Black Site 13 for indefinite containment. He shuts down Requiem and has Weaver, Carver, Strauss, Gray, and Raptor 1 arrested and sent to Terminus Island. Before leaving, the director passes a picture of his wife and son and a snow globe with a house in it. A similar house to Agartha. The director is then revealed to be Edward Richtofen, Eddie, the only other surviving person from before the Universal Reset. 5 years later, a disfigured Peck seeks passage from Japan to the middle of the Philippine Ocean to reunite with some old friends. Skipping all the way to the 2020s, a mercenary group called Terminus Outcomes identify a point of interest in Urzikstan. This group is run by Fletcher, who once served on Terminus Island in the mid-90s. They enter a building's basement and find the long-dead remains of the heads of Requiem, Weaver, Carver, Gray, and Strauss. They are all sitting round and connected to a machine. The machine opens, and 2 Dark Ether vials pop out, but another 2 are missing. Viktor Zakayev, from the Modern Warfare campaigns, is given one of the vials and breaks it, starting an outbreak. The US is ready, however, as after the Cold War, Operation Deadbolt was formed to counter these outbreaks. Also working for Deadbolt is Ravenov, who after the Forsaken was captured, went MIA and evaded capture. During this time, he unsuccessfully plotted to rescue Sam with the Requiem leads. After this, he struggled to find meaning. Around then, his DNA was acquired without his consent. Miller is also a Deadbolt worker, who, as a child, survived an outbreak in Liberty Falls. Her mother and father both died. Deadbolt operatives help extract Ava Jansen, an Ethereum-studying physicist who was working for Zakayev after he offered to fund her research. After agreeing to help Deadbolt, Ava has a vivid hallucination of a zombie outbreak at the Deadbolt facility. She sees undead versions of the Requiem team and a female entity calling to her, asking to be let in. She fights off the zombies and suddenly slashes at Ravenov's neck, killing him. While being arrested, her eyes turn purple and she says, She wakes and realizes she was hallucinating, with Ravenov still talking to her on the other end of the radio. Throughout the next few months, Deadbolt makes multiple incursions into the outbreak zone and defeats the being known as the Entity that seems somehow linked to Ava. She also discovers that she has ethereal powers. Eventually, after nearly being lost into the Dark Ether, Ravenov tells her the truth. Her mother was Samantha Maxis, and her father is Ravenov, but carried and born through surrogate by Elizabeth Gray. Ravenov shows Ava a recording, in which Grey admits she gave Ava up to protect her at 3 years old, but says that because of her Maxis genes, she is linked with the Dark Ether more than anyone else. She also learns that Requiem knew they were going to die. Ravenov tells Ava that the entity is a shadow or reflection of her, born at the same moment she was, and its influence on her still grows stronger. In one last mission, the entity admits to Ava that there are other ancient beings in the Dark Ether that want her power. In the final battle with the entity, Deadbolt, Ava and Ravenov defeat it in the same way Samantha did against the Forsaken, by powering herself up with zombie souls, and it then disappears. As the entity fades, it says, "Little sister, he is searching for you. The Shadow Smiths will take you." The outbreak zone disappears, and the gateway to the Dark Ether collapses. 3 months later, in West Virginia, Ava is at Liberty Falls, the site where Richtofen was holding the containment device. She is in some sort of motel. She answers a call from Ravenov while looking through folders labeled Project Janus. A photo of Richtofen is in the front. As Ava walks past the mirror, a shadowy figure appears inside of it, surrounded by purple smoke. The silhouette of rooftops can be made out behind the figure, and it seems to be wearing a hat, very reminiscent of the Shadow Man from the original universe. It is slightly different though. Ava mentions that she was curious about Miller's report about where she survived an outbreak as a child. Suddenly, Ravenov starts shouting warnings for her to get out, but the shadowy figure reaches a purple, ethereal hand out and reaches through. It calls to Ava as a chorus of voices. Ava approaches, asking if it's her mother, Samantha, when it suddenly grabs her by the wrist and pulls her into the mirror, now a swirling purple vortex. The only thing remaining is her phone, as Ravenov pleads for her to answer. The painting on the wall of the room says, "Welcome to Liberty Falls. One visit and you'll want to stay forever." Six years after the Forsaken had been captured during the Cold War, Edward Richtofen dreams of his family on a picnic, where he sees that they are suddenly burning alive. He awakens at Liberty Falls. He has a large, noticeable but healed scar on his neck. An alarm starts sounding. He checks in with his team from a monitor, who state that something is wrong with Sam on sub-level 10. Dimensional breaches are occurring across the facility. The staff suddenly vanish, with a gaseous pool behind them. Richtofen grabs a Wunderwaffe DG2 and saves a security officer named Blanchett. He asks him to secure and call in response teams, locking Liberty Falls down. He fights his way past the T-Rex skeleton and reaches an elevator where he states his name is Edward Richtofen, director of Project Janus. Once inside, a purple smoke slams him against the wall as he shouts that Sam will never be free, and then disappears. The elevator door opens, revealing the containment device of the Forsaken, and Samantha's voice replies,
"But Edward, I already am."
At the exact same time, the 5 imprisoned members of Requiem are being tortured to madness on Terminus Island. Strauss may have started to go mad. Raptor 1 is enjoying some music. Gray and Carver are doing press-ups, and Weaver is surrounded by his writings on the wall, including a day tally, the word Richtofen, drawings of some wonder weapons, the Requiem logo, and a drawing of some Elder God symbols, including the construct. A new character, Maya Aguinaldo, kills the guard and breaks them out. Peck approaches and introduces her. Carver attacks Peck, but they realize that they have a common enemy now, Richtofen. Richtofen has allegedly stolen Peck's life work. He suggests finding and killing him. An alarm sounds, and Maya protests that they need to find her brother. They agree to split up, restore power, find Maya's brother, and then extract. When you load into Liberty Falls, you will be working as a strike team, 24 hours after the incursion began, assisting Blanchett to find survivors and investigate the mysteries of the small town. But there seems to be a mysterious church whose doors lead into the Dark Ether once again. When joining the Requiem team on Terminus Island, you will discover mutant zombie hybrids, an outbreak that has only just begun, and hopefully, Maya's brother and a way out. You will need to work with Peck this time, but is he trustworthy? There is also something lurking in the water just outside the island.
And, I guess for the last time, hoorah.
Well, 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 look who made it to the end of the video. Here's your honorary zombies degree. Thank you all so much for watching all of this. It's a miracle I finished it on time, but I'm really happy with how it came out. Please leave a like and maybe consider subscribing. You'll get more edited Black Ops 6 content as well as the usual custom maps. If there's anything I got wrong in this video, please just let me know in the comments and I'll pin your correction. With that being said, we're just 1 week now from Black Ops 6. Let's go, baby!
Perk machines have become an integral part of the Call of Duty Zombies experience. They provide players with unique abilities that can help them survive against the relentless and unwavering hordes of the undead. However, the origins of these machines, and their evolution throughout the Call of Duty Zombies franchise's history, remain a fascinating and unexplored topic. Today, we will delve deeper into the history of these perk machines, tracing their roots and examining the various changes they have undergone throughout the series. Please sit back, relax, and let's explore the history of the perk machines throughout Call of Duty Zombies. Before we begin, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you, the viewer, for all of your incredible support. I know this video has taken an exceptionally long time to make, and for that, I apologize. I'd also like to ask you to take a moment to click the like button. I put my heart and soul into these videos, and clicking the like button, as simple as it may seem, helps out far more than you know. And click the subscribe button to get notified about new videos. I'd also like to thank my channel members. Channel members got to see this video a week early, so if you'd like to support me directly and see video essays a week early, consider becoming a channel member today. It should be noted that in this video I am covering over 15 years of video game history. I'm also covering this topic at a more basic level, and so if there is any information that I missed during this video, I do apologize, but please note that I did my best. The inception of Call of Duty Zombies begins with Treyarch's second game in the franchise, Call of Duty World at War.
some developers decided to create and hide a round-based zombie survival mode within the game. This mode would have you fight against only a few zombies in round 1, then a few more in round 2. More zombies would spawn with each increasing round until the player was fighting against hundreds of the undead. The goal was to reach as high of a round as possible, which came as no easy feat, considering just how ruthless the zombies could get in higher rounds. This was all in what would be the developer's first map, known as Nacht der Untoten. The mode would be a huge success, prompting the studio to allow the developers to make more maps, which would be released with future downloadable content for the game. The second map to be released would be Verruckt. Verruckt introduced various systems into the Zombies mode that would later become integral parts of Call of Duty Zombies, such as traps, a power switch, and our subject of this essay, perk machines. 4 different perks were added to the mode via their introduction in Verruckt. They were implemented as soda machines, and thus have a fun animation of cracking open a soda and drinking it before the perk becomes enabled for the player. These perks were Quick Revive, Double Tap Root Beer, Juggernog, and Speed Cola. Quick Revive halves the time it takes to revive a player. It is the cheapest perk available, costing 1500 points. In single player, there is no effect whatsoever. Double Tap Root Beer increases the player's weapon's rate of fire by 30%. It costs 2000 points to purchase. Juggernog increases the player's health to 200, allowing them to survive 4 hits from zombies as opposed to 2 without Juggernog. It is the second most expensive perk of the 4, at 2500 points. Lastly is Speed Cola, which decreases the player's reload time and allows them to board up barriers faster. It is the most expensive perk of the 4, costing 3000 points. The perk machines coexist alongside the power switch, requiring that power be enabled before you can purchase a perk from one of the machines. These 4 original perks have since become famous within the community. The third Call of Duty Zombies map, and the second map made available via downloadable content, was Shinonuma. Shinonuma maintained the same 4 perks introduced in Verruckt. However, a new randomization system was implemented into the map. Each of the 4 perks can be found in one of the 4 corners of the map. Upon reaching one of the 4 corners, the player will be prompted to open a final door. Opening this door will spawn one of the 4 perks at random. The 4th and final Call of Duty Zombies map, and the third made available via downloadable content, was Der Riese. Der Riese, once again, maintains the same 4 perks introduced back in Verruckt, and has random spawn locations much like Shinonuma. However, the perk locations are determined at the start of the match, and not when the room is opened, unlike Shinonuma. Call of Duty World at War introduced us to the perk system, and its implementation would make it an integral part of Call of Duty Zombies. However, Call of Duty Black Ops would refine the system and make changes to some of the original perks, which would update the perk system to the one we know and love today. Kino der Toten was the first zombie map in Call of Duty Black Ops. Because Black Ops is the best-selling Call of Duty title of all time, Kino der Toten is the map most players are familiar with. All 4 of the original perks are available on this map, that being Quick Revive, Double Tap Root Beer, Juggernog, and Speed Cola. However, a vital change was made to one perk in particular. In Call of Duty World at War, Quick Revive existed exclusively as a multiplayer perk. You could purchase it in solo, but its only use is to revive other players quicker. If you were playing solo, the perk would be completely useless. This was changed in Call of Duty Black Ops. In solo, the perk only costs 500 points as opposed to 1500. It still costs 1500 points when playing co-op, but I digress. When Quick Revive is purchased in solo, it will revive the player upon the player going down. All of the perks purchased by the player, including Quick Revive, are removed as a punishment for going down. This makes the perk not only useful in solo play, but integral. It is usually the first perk any player purchases when playing in solo. To make the perk fair, the perk can only be purchased 3 times, after which the perk disappears, and if the player goes down a 4th time, it's game over. 5 was the second map in Black Ops. It was a secret map, only made available to players who had beaten the campaign or who entered the code 3ARC unlock into the terminal at the main menu. Nothing changes in terms of perks with 5. The 4 original perks are available, and these are, of course, their updated counterparts, much like in Keynote or Token. Ascension was the 3rd zombie map in Black Ops, and was introduced as the first map via downloadable content. Ascension made some interesting changes to the perk machine lineup, adding 2 new perks, but also removing 1. Ascension introduced one of the most famous perks in Call of Duty Zombies, Stamina. Stamina costs 2,000 points and gives the player twice the amount of sprint endurance and increases the player's sprint speed by 7%. It's a very useful perk in Ascension because of the size of the map. Ascension was by far the largest zombie map made up to this point, so a perk that boosts sprint speed was an ideal addition. The second new perk added to Ascension was PhD Flopper. PhD Flopper also costs 2,000 points, and completely negates self-inflicted damage. The perk has another interesting feature. Upon diving to prone from a height that would normally inflict damage to the player, a radius explosion of approximately 7.5 meters, or 24.6 feet, is created. The explosion is very powerful, with a maximum of 5,000 damage at the center of the blast, and can kill zombies with one hit up to approximately round 20. Ascension, however, makes the interesting choice of removing double tap root beer from the perk roster. It should be noted that with the addition of more than 4 perks, a perk limit was added, only allowing the player to purchase up to 4 perks regardless. This is to prevent the player from becoming too overpowered, and could have played a role in the decision to only have 6 perks on the map instead of 7. With the restriction of only being allowed to have 4 perks, a 7th perk could have made the players indecisive when choosing the 4 perks they would like to purchase. Though the legitimate reasoning for the removal of double tap is unknown, it could have just been a creative choice. Call of the Dead was the 4th zombie map in Black Ops, and the 2nd map made available via downloadable content. This map sees the 4 original perks return: Quick Revive, Juggernog, Speed Cola, and Double Tap Root Beer, confirming the idea that double tap not being available in Ascension was probably a creative decision. Call of the Dead would also see the return of PhD Flopper and Stamina. However, it would also introduce a new perk, Deadshot Daiquiri. Deadshot Daiquiri costs 1,500 points, but on the PC version of Call of Duty Black Ops, it only costs 1,000 points, to compensate for the lack of aim assist when using a mouse and keyboard. Deadshot reduces weapon spread by 35%, moves the aim assist lock-on location from the torso to the head, and completely removes weapon sway while aiming down the sights. Deadshot has typically been mocked and criticized as being a useless perk. While shooting zombies in the head does kill them more quickly, it also means the player would earn fewer points, considering the player earns points for every bullet that hits a zombie. Headshots are also not typically that difficult to hit in a PvE mode such as Call of Duty Zombies. That being said, most players would choose to aim for the torsos or legs of the zombies anyway. Even if it means the zombies won't die as quickly, it does mean that the player will earn more points, and more points means more hits on the box, more doors that can be opened, more perks, and even an upgrade at the Pack-a-Punch machine. Virtually every other perk in Call of the Dead is far more useful than Deadshot, and when you consider that the player has a perk limit of 4, it becomes easier to understand why Deadshot is disregarded by most, if not all, players. Most players would opt to buy Quick Revive for more lives, Juggernog for more health, and Speed Cola for faster reloads, leaving only 1 perk slot. Stamina Up and Double Tap are both very useful perks in their own right, and considering the Wonder Weapon in Call of the Dead shoots an explosive round, it's easy to understand why some players would even opt for PhD Flopper as their 4th perk, alienating Deadshot. That is, until Black Ops Cold War, but we'll get there eventually. Shangri-La was the 5th zombie map in Black Ops, and the 3rd made available via downloadable content. Nothing changes with this map. The same 7 perks from Call of the Dead are available on this map. However, Shangri-La does bring back the random perk location system. This changes the playstyle of the map, especially if you are planning to camp in an area in your survival strategy. For example, if you were planning to survive at the bridge, and you got Speed Cola instead of Juggernog, you may opt to restart the game for the chance to get Juggernog. This adds a fun element to the gameplay of the map, though some people might disagree. And some people believe RNG, or random number generators, the system that determines what spawns where, should not be in Call of Duty Zombies at all, but that's for another video. Moon was the 6th and final original map for Black Ops, and was the 4th made available via downloadable content. Moon brings back all 7 perks available in the previous 2 maps, and adds a new one. Moon would introduce Mule Kick to the Zombies community, and this perk would change the way people played Call of Duty Zombies forever. Mule Kick allows the player to carry 3 weapons at once. It also costs 4,000 points to purchase, making it the most expensive perk in Call of Duty Zombies. The reason this perk changed the way players played the game was entirely dependent on their use case. If the player was just trying to do an Easter egg, they probably wouldn't need Mule Kick. They might opt for a perk like Stamina or PhD Flopper. However, if the player was trying to go for a high round, they might opt for Mule Kick instead, considering it would give the player another weapon with a full reserve of ammunition. Mule Kick would likely be their 4th perk over Stamina, PhD Flopper, Double Tap, and Deadshot. Now, at this point, I'm sure many people are screaming at their screens over my discussion of Mule Kick, and me having missed it in all of the previous maps. But allow me to enlighten you. Mule Kick was originally introduced in the map Moon, and was later added to all of the previous maps. Kino der Toten, 5, Ascension, Call of the Dead, and Shangri-La did not originally have Mule Kick as a perk, and this can be confirmed by loading up the game in offline mode, and going to where the perk would usually be. I'm sure most people are very familiar with the location of Mule Kick on Kino der Toten, for example. This perk was not originally here, but after DLC 4, it was added as a part of Update 1.15 to the map and every map between Kino der Toten and Moon. I'm also sure that there are a lot of people who already know this, but if you didn't, I'm happy to have enlightened you. Included in DLC 4 of Black Ops were remasters of the 4 original maps from World at War. Nocturne Toten was updated with one single perk, Mule Kick. This perk was added to help the player have the bare-bones survival feel that the original map had, but still help the player by allowing them to carry 3 weapons. Mule Kick was also added to the remaster of Derice, however the other 2 maps, Verruckt and Shinonuma, maintained the original perk roster. Call of Duty Black Ops 2 was the next game developed by Treyarch, and the next Call of Duty to have a zombie mode. The first map in Black Ops 2 was Transit. Transit has become a famous map in the community, but for all the wrong reasons. Transit is considered to be, by most, one of the worst zombie maps ever made. I understand that there is a large amount of people who genuinely, unironically love Transit. So to avoid my comment section being flooded with Transit defenders, I'm not going to talk about all of Transit's shortcomings, and instead focus on how it implemented and altered some of its perks. Transit sees the return of 5 classic perks from Black Ops. These perks were Speed Cola, Quick Revive, Juggernog, Stamina, and Double Tap Root Beer. However, Double Tap Root Beer was a new and improved version of the original perk. Double Tap from Black Ops and World at War simply increased the rate of fire of the player's weapon by 30%. Double Tap 2.0, as it's referred to in Black Ops 2, still increases the rate of fire of your weapon by 33%, but also doubles the amount of damage that the weapon can deal. Transit would also introduce a new perk to Call of Duty Zombies, Tombstone Soda. Tombstone Soda is not available in solo play, only in co-op. The perk costs 2,000 points and allows the player, when downed, to use the interact button to drop a power-up that looks like a tombstone. This also kills the player in the process. When the player respawns in the following round, they would then be able to pick up the tombstone power-up, giving the player back all of the weapons and perks they had, excluding the Tombstone Soda perk. This sounds like an obvious perk to use when playing in multiplayer. However, Tombstone Soda does, unfortunately, have some shortcomings. After the player respawns, they only have 90 seconds to get to their Tombstone power-up before it despawns, losing all of their perks and weapons. Also, if the player is revived by a teammate before being able to drop their Tombstone power-up, it will be as if they had never had Tombstone in the first place. The player will still have their weapons, of course, but all of their perks will be gone. just like if the player were to have gone down without Tombstone Soda at all. Tombstone Soda was made virtually obsolete from the start by not allowing players to be revived without losing all of their perks, or by only allowing the player 90 seconds to retrieve their perks and weapons upon respawning into the game. With these hindrances, it is just easier for players, even in co-op, to buy essentially any other perk. Stamina Up would be great for traversing a map as large as Transit, or Double Tap would be great for dealing greater damage to zombies. Most people probably forget that Tombstone Soda even exists because of how useless it is in practice. Transit also introduced a peculiar device that can have complex interactions with the environment: the turbine. The turbine is one of the buildables on the map. It is essentially portable power on a miniature scale, and its interaction with the perks is quite interesting. If the player has enough points to buy a perk, but the power is not yet turned on, they could place the turbine next to the perk to power the machine to buy the perk. However, the perk cannot yet be used until the power is turned on. While this may seem redundant, and that's because it is, it does prevent the player from having to make another full rotation around the map before they can purchase the perk. So that's cool, I guess. Nuketown was the second zombie map for Black Ops 2. It unfortunately was locked behind a paywall that was the season pass for the game, but I digress. Nuketown was a bare-bones survival map, primarily made for those who wanted a break from Transit at launch. Only 4 perks are available on the map. They are the 4 original perks: Quick Revive, Double Tap, Juggernog, and Speed Cola. The perks have random spawn locations around the map, much like the various zombie maps of the past. However, Nuketown's approach was vastly different, and somewhat disliked by most of the community. Perk machines fall from the sky, landing in various random locations around the map. However, they don't all fall at once. They fall every couple of rounds. During the first round, Quick Revive will always spawn, but every perk, including the Pack-a-Punch machine, will come later. The order in which they fall, and the location they fall to, are both decided at random. This means that it's possible for Juggernog to not spawn until rounds as high as 17, making Nuketown one of the most challenging zombie maps ever made. Die Rise was the third zombie map for Black Ops 2, and was the map included in the game's first DLC. Die Rise is regarded in the community as one of the worst zombie maps of all time, if not the worst zombie map ever created. However, much like Transit, some people genuinely enjoy this map, so I'm going to refrain from criticizing the map and simply focus on the perks within the map. Die Rise brought back the 4 original perks plus Mule Kick. It would also introduce a new perk, Who's Who. Who's Who costs 2,000 points and allows the player to revive themselves after they are down. If down, the player will take control of a doppelganger that can then be used to revive the player's downed character or any other downed player in the match. If the players successfully revive themselves, or if another player revives them, they will keep all perks and equipment they had before they got downed, apart from Who's Who. On paper, this perk sounds pretty useful. However, in practice, this perk is a nightmare. It takes up one of the player's 4 very valuable perk slots, and is a virtually useless perk. Useless how? When you take control of this doppelganger, you have no weapons except for the starting pistol. On any round beyond round 4, the starting pistol becomes nothing but a paperweight. If the player were to go down on round 50, they would have virtually no hope of reviving themselves. Even if the player were to revive themselves, they would be surrounded by the undead that had chased their doppelganger to their body and go down again, losing all of their perks anyway. Who's Who is one of the worst perks ever implemented into Call of Duty Zombies, hands down. There was one other perk added to Die Rise, PhD Flopper. Die Rise is a unique zombie map, in that the design and layout of the map is structured vertically, as opposed to every other zombie map that is more structured horizontally. Because the map is more vertical than horizontal, this inherently means that there are great heights and areas where the player can easily fall to their death. This means that PhD Flopper is a great addition to the map, because of its negation of self-inflicted damage, including fall damage. The problem is that PhD Flopper isn't in an obtainable area. It's included as an Easter egg that can be seen during the fall of the elevator in the spawn room. It exists more as a taunt to players than an Easter egg, and left a sour taste in the mouths of players. This was also likely one of the deciding factors that played into the firing of Zombies lead developer and co-founder Jimmy Zielinski. Excuse me, I said I wasn't going to do that. Mob of the Dead was the follow-up map to Die Rise, and is considered to be the map that saved Call of Duty Zombies from the impending doom of players losing interest in the mode, which could have led to the ultimate termination of the mode. Mob of the Dead sees the return of 3 of the original perks: Double Tap Root Beer, Juggernog, and Speed Cola. It also saw the return of Deadshot Daiquiri from Call of the Dead, which was an interesting choice, but I digress. Mob of the Dead also saw the introduction of a new perk, Electric Cherry. Electric Cherry costs 2,000 points and creates an electric shockwave around the player whenever they reload that may stun an adjacent zombie. The perk is simple enough, but is a very useful perk given the circumstances of the map. Mob of the Dead has very tight corridors, narrow stairwells, and confined spaces. This isn't a problem when the player is firing their weapon in the hordes of the undead, but very much becomes a problem upon running out of ammunition. Electric Cherry aims to help with this problem. When working in tandem with Speed Cola, the player would be able to reload quickly and stun any adjacent zombies, allowing the player to quickly finish their reload and carry on taking care of the undead. Considering that Quick Revive isn't an available perk on the map, and that most players are unlikely to choose Deadshot as their 4th perk, Electric Cherry makes for an excellent 4th perk for the map. Which brings me to my next question. Why isn't Quick Revive on the map? Mob of the Dead introduced a map-exclusive system known as the Afterlife system. The Afterlife system allows the player to revive themselves much like Who's Who from Die Rise, only the zombies are unable to see your ghostly self. This allows Quick Revive to be removed from the roster of perks, and allows the player to choose another perk they may not have chosen otherwise because Quick Revive is an essential perk. The Afterlife system also adds an additional life to the player each round, up to a maximum of 2. This means that, theoretically, the player could have an infinite number of downs if played right, making the Afterlife system very powerful. However, Mob of the Dead is not an easy map by any means, requiring the player to complete enormous portions of the Easter egg just to pack-a-punch their weapon, but I go into more detail about this in my Mob of the Dead video essay. Buried was Black Ops 2's 3rd DLC map, and was the final map developed by Jimmy Zielinski, one of the original developers who created Call of Duty Zombies. He brought us every map from Nocturne Totem to Moon, but after the terrible response the community had to Transit and Die Rise, he would ultimately be let go from the company. This is unfortunate because Buried is a genuinely great zombie map, but I plan on going into deeper thoughts about that in a future video. Buried sees the return of the 4 original perks, along with Stamina and Mule Kick. The player can also obtain PhD Flopper and Tombstone Soda via persistent upgrades. The community refers to these as perma-perks, which can be obtained through unique methods such as completing the Super Easter Egg across all Victus maps using the nav card. Buried would also introduce a new perk known as Vulture Aid. Vulture Aid costs 3,000 points and is fairly complex in its functionality. The player would be able to see perks, wall weapons, places to draw chalk wall buys, the Pack-a-Punch machine, and the mystery box through walls over a short distance. Zombies will occasionally drop small packets of ammo or points, ranging from 5 to 20 points. Certain zombies will release a cloud of green gas upon death, which will cause players standing inside of it to be ignored by other zombies. Buried has a lot of complicated systems in it, such as the Paralyzer Wonder Weapon, or using Arthur to open areas, hold zombies, and respin the box. The perks on this map are no exception. Following Buried would be the final map released in Black Ops 2, Origins. Origins is considered to be one of the greatest zombie maps ever created by most people due to its complexity. The perk system in this map remains fairly straightforward, but obtaining said perks can indeed be complex. Origins does have a perk limit of 4 just like every other map. However, it is possible, through very strategic methods, to obtain every single perk on the map. This is the reason the Rainbow Perk Challenge and Reverse Rainbow Perk Challenge are possible on this map. There are 5 perk machines around the map: Quick Revive, Stamina Up, Juggernog, Speed Cola, and Mule Kick. However, there are 9 perks available to players. Double Tap can be obtained via rituals that can be completed around the map. The other 3 perks that can be obtained are PhD Flopper, Deadshot Daiquiri, and Electric Cherry. How can the player obtain these perks? By using a new device implemented into Origins called the Wonder Fizz. This machine costs 1500 points to use and behaves similarly to the Mystery Box. Upon using the device, it will randomly spin through any of the perks the player does not already have. All 9 perks can be obtained via the Wonder Fizz, through various Easter eggs that can be completed, as well as dig sites that can be dug using the shovel. Digging up enough dig sites will give the player the Golden Shovel, which can then be used to dig up the Golden Helmet, which can then be used to dig up an empty perk bottle, which gives the player an extra perk slot. As I said, Origins is a complicated zombie map. On November 4th, 2014, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare was released to the world, and would change not only the Call of Duty franchise as we know it, but the gaming industry as a whole. See, Advanced Warfare added a new system to the game known as loot boxes. While I won't dive too deep into this mechanic in this video, this system changed the gaming industry forever. The loot box system was an idea Sledgehammer Games and Activision borrowed from another popular first-person shooter, Counter-Strike Global Offensive. While this system had existed before the release of Advanced Warfare, this Call of Duty title taught other studios that the mechanic could be included in console games, and that it could make studios a lot of money. However, this video is about the perks in Call of Duty Zombies. Why am I talking about Advanced Warfare and its loot box system? Well, Advanced Warfare did some questionable things to squeeze all the pennies they could out of its player base, and I needed to set up the game's loot box system to show you just how scummy this game really was. On February 26th, 2015, Advanced Warfare's first DLC was released, and it brought to the world the first zombie mode not developed by Treyarch. They called it Exo Zombies. It provided interesting movement to the game mode, and many players thought this mode to be a breath of fresh air, especially after Black Ops 2 had several maps that people were not huge fans of. The problem was that this brand new zombie mode was locked behind a paywall. Every mode before this, World at War, Black Ops, and Black Ops 2, provided the player with a free map that players could play on, and if they decided they liked the mode enough, they could then purchase DLC packs to play more. Advanced Warfare forced players to purchase DLC to play their zombie mode. I understand that a lot of people argued that a zombie mode was not planned, so they couldn't just add the mode to the base game. There wasn't enough time for development to finish the map before launch. It had to be included in the DLC. To those people, I say bullshit. The devs clearly had enough time to add a zombie Easter egg to the end of the survival mode, teasing that a zombie mode would be coming. Why wouldn't they just do the zombie mode instead of the survival mode, and have it ready for launch? The answer? Money. Easter eggs were huge at the time, especially in the zombie community. Sledgehammer Games knew that they could tease players with a zombie Easter egg at the end of the survival game mode, hyping up players and convincing them to purchase the first DLC pack to play their new zombie mode. I know this video is about perks in the franchise and how they evolved across the games, but I just needed to give my opinion about this DLC model, because it has angered me for almost 10 years. In Advanced Warfare Zombie Mode, the player jumps around the map in an exo suit, providing the player with a new, unique way to play a zombie map. On these maps are devices that provide what is called an exo upgrade. These exo upgrades work the same way perks work in the Treyarch maps. They provide the player with ways to become slightly stronger, giving the player a bit of an advantage against the extremely aggressive zombies. There are various exo upgrades around the map, which are as follows: Exo Health, Exo Medic, Exo Slam, Exo Soldier, Exo Reload, and Exo Stockpile. There is no perk limit in Exo Zombies, so the player can obtain all perks in a single playthrough with no issues. Exo Health works much like Juggernog. It costs 2,500 points and provides the player with more health, allowing the player to go down in 7 hits instead of 4. Exo Medic works almost exactly like Quick Revive. It costs 1,500 points in multiplayer or 500 points in solo. In multiplayer, it allows the player to revive teammates twice as fast, but in solo it allows the player to revive themselves. In solo it can only be purchased 3 times, after which it becomes unavailable to the player. Exo Slam is an upgrade unique to Exo Zombies. It costs 2,000 points and provides the player with a boost slam ability that can deal a lot of damage to the zombies in the area of effect. There is a brief cooldown between slams, however. Exo Soldier is another upgrade unique to Exo Zombies. It costs 1,750 points and allows the player to fire their weapon while sprinting and sliding. It also increases weapon swap speed and hip fire accuracy. Exo Reload works much the same as Speed Cola. It costs 2,000 points and decreases the time it takes to reload by 50%. These are all the perks available to the player in the first 2 maps, Outbreak and Infection. In the third map, Carrier, Exo Stockpile would be introduced. It costs 2,000 points and allows the player to carry 20% more ammunition. It also allows the player to hold 1 extra lethal and tactical grenade. This upgrade would also be available in Advanced Warfare's final map, Descent. Black Ops 3 was considered to be revolutionary within the zombie community. Every map that was released for this game was a hit. People often refer to Black Ops 3 as the best iteration of the mode we have ever seen. And with the ability to play custom community-made maps on the PC version, it's no wonder why Black Ops 3 is loved by the community so much. To this day, almost 9 years after the release of the game, there are close to 8,000 people actively playing this game every day, and that is just on Steam. Black Ops 3 was released with 2 maps at launch, one of which was locked behind a paywall, much like Nuketown from Black Ops 2. Let's talk about the base game map first, Shadows of Evil. Black Ops 3 overhauled a lot of the systems from previous games, buildables, pack-a-punch, and movement just to name a few. However, the perk system remained untouched. Why fix what isn't broken? This would not remain the case in Black Ops 4, but we'll touch on that soon. The 4 original perks are available to players in Shadows of Evil: Quick Revive, Double Tap, Juggernog, and Speed Cola. Players could also find Stamina Up and Mule Kick on the map. However, a new perk would be added to the roster: Widow's Wine. Widow's Wine has 4 primary effects. Zombies that hit the player will unleash a wave of webbing from the player, trapping nearby zombies for 20 seconds. The distance zombies are from the player dictates how trapped they become. Zombies directly next to the player will become completely frozen, while those further away will simply have their movement slowed. Grenades become sticky Widow's Wine grenades, similar to Semtex. When thrown, they have the same effect upon detonation as if a zombie hit the player. Any zombies not killed by the explosion will be caught in a web for 20 seconds. If a zombie is stuck with one, it will be instantly frozen. Each of the previous 2 effects uses 1 grenade, up to the number of grenades the player currently holds, which can be up to 4. Grenades will replenish by 2 at the start of every round and can be completely refilled with the max ammo. If a zombie is killed while affected by Widow's Wine, it has a chance to drop a blue spider power-up, which replenishes 1 grenade. The player's knife has a chance to freeze zombies, similar to the webbing effect. The knife will also do more damage, killing it in 1 hit until round 4. This effect stacks with the Sword Flay Gobblegum. Using Widow's Wine in tandem with Juggernog allows the player to become very powerful. Black Ops 3 increased the player's health from 100 to 150, allowing the player to be hit 3 times before going down instead of 2, like in previous games. Juggernog adds 100 health, allowing the player to be hit 5 times before going down. If the player also had Widow's Wine equipped and had 4 grenades in their inventory, they could then be hit 4 times before even beginning to take damage, allowing the player to be hit a total of 9 times before going down. Widow's Wine is a very powerful perk that most players would likely choose as their 4th perk, over Double Tap or Stamina Up. I quickly want to backtrack to Gobblegums for a moment. Black Ops 3 retains the 4 perk limit that every game previous has had. This doesn't have to be the case, however. The player can use Gobblegums to remove that perk limit and become even more powerful. Unfortunately, Gobblegums work much like loot boxes. The player spends real-world currency to spin a machine in the menu that will give the player random Gobblegums in return. Some of these Gobblegums can be very powerful, and thus are considered more of a pay-to-win system. That being said, Gobblegums were much more accepted by the zombie community, unlike the proper loot boxes that could be found in the multiplayer mode. This is likely because every gobblegum is useful in its own right, unlike a lot of the items that could be found in the loot boxes available in multiplayer. Now, all of this is to say that there are some gobblegums that can remove the perk limit and allow the player to obtain all possible perks on a single map. For example, Soda Fountain allows the player to purchase more than 4 perks. It has 5 activations before being removed from the player's inventory, allowing the player to obtain up to 9 perks. Another gobblegum is Perkaholic, which is considered to be one of the most powerful gobblegums in the game. Simply put, Perkaholic gives the player all available perks on the map in a single activation. In Shadows of Evil, for example, the player would receive Quick Revive, Double Tap, Juggernog, Speed Pulla, Stamina, Mule Kick, and Widow's Wand. What prevents gobblegums from becoming too overpowered is that they are random and expensive. A player could gamble a dozen times and not receive a single Perkaholic, meaning they would have to rely on Soda Fountain or just go with Warfare. The Giant was the second map released with Black Ops 3, and was locked behind a paywall that was the season pass for the game. The map had all 4 original perks available for the player, with the addition of Mule Kick. Much like the World at War map that this map is a remaster of, the perk machine spawn locations are randomized, making every playthrough feel unique. The map also included a short Easter egg that, when completed, would spawn an additional perk machine. There is a 50% chance that one of the 2 perk machines would spawn, Stamina or Deadshot Daiquiri. The map still has a 4 perk limit, meaning if the player wanted to use either of these perks as their 4th perk, they would need to complete the Easter egg and hope that the correct perk machine spawns, adding another element of RNG to the map, which Black Ops 3 has plenty of. If the player were to use a Perkaholic, however, they would receive all 7 perks regardless of the perk limit or spawn location. Der Eisendrache was the first zombie map to be released as a part of the Black Ops 3's DLC cycle, and is widely considered to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest, zombie maps ever created. This trend would continue for some time, with every map that was released being a hit with the community. Der Eisendrache, in terms of perks, stays pretty simple. All 4 original perks can be found on the map, with the inclusion of Stamina and Mule Kick. However, this map would see the return of the Wonder Fizz. The Wonder Fizz allowed players to obtain 3 additional perks that could not be found on the map: Deadshot Daiquiri, Electric Cherry, and Widow's Wine. The Wonder Fizz was a great addition to the map, switching up gameplay elements and setup strategies if the player were trying to obtain one of the 3 perks exclusively available via the Wonder Fizz. Because of the RNG systems of the device, it could take the player a couple of spins before finally obtaining the perk they were going for, using points that could have been used hitting the box or pack-a-punching, delaying the player's setup. Zetsubo no Shima was the follow-up map to Der Eisendrache. The perk roster remained simple, but with a couple of interesting methods for obtaining additional perks. Zetsubo no Shima once again has all 4 original perks on the map, with the addition of Stamina and Mule Kick. The map also has the standard 4 perk limit, much like every other map. However, multiple perk slots can be opened to the player, allowing them to obtain up to 9 perks. Zetsubo has a very complicated system of planting seeds that can reap rewards. The plant you grow, as well as the rewards you can receive, are entirely dependent on the type of water you use on the seeds you plant. I won't go into depth in this planting system, but it should be known that the player can receive an empty perk bottle from plants, allowing the player to obtain 1 additional perk. Through different methods of planting seeds, the player can also obtain 2 additional perks: Deadshot Daiquiri and Electric Cherry. Then, after defeating the first boss in the Easter egg, the Giant Spider, the player will receive a free perk. This perk is Widow's Wine, the 9th perk on the map. Gorod Krovi, the map included with the 3rd DLC for Black Ops 3, maintains the simple perk roster found in the previous 2 DLC maps, the original 4 perks, along with Stamina and Mule Kick. The map would also include the Wonder Fizz, allowing the player to obtain Deadshot Daiquiri, Electric Cherry, and Widow's Wine. Gorod Krovi did a lot to enhance other aspects of the game, such as access to Pack-a-Punch, upgrading monkey bombs, and other little details. However, the perk machines remain untouched and provide the player a simple experience. Revelations was included with the 4th DLC for Black Ops 3. This map provided a bit of controversy in the community because it was not an original map, and was instead a mashup of some of the most well-regarded maps in Call of Duty Zombies. While I do agree that the final map for Black Ops 3 being mostly unoriginal and just a mashup of some of the other maps was a little disappointing at the time, my experience with this map has made it one of my favorite maps of all time. The nostalgia I have for playing with friends, experiencing it for the first time, and completing the Easter egg for the first time all culminate in the opinion I have for this map, and why I hold it in such high regard. My personal opinions about the map aside, the map once again maintains a simple roster of perks. The original 4 can be found on the map, along with Stamina Up and Mule Kick, and Widow's Wine. The Wonder Fizz is also included in the map, allowing the player to obtain Electric Cherry and Deadshot Daiquiri. You'll find that, as far as the perks go for the 4 main DLC maps, they're pretty simple, maintaining mostly the same roster across all 4. However, that wouldn't be the case for Black Ops 3's 5th and final DLC. Zombies Chronicles was released to the world on May 16, 2017, and topped the charts of DLC sales for many months. The expansion for Black Ops 3 has been #1 on the DLC sales chart multiple times, at least on PlayStation, but that also holds on Steam, making $1.7 million in gross since launch. Now, $1.7 million doesn't sound like a lot, especially since we're talking about a billion-dollar company. However, when you think about these being Steam numbers, for a game that was released during prime console time, you begin to realize just how huge those numbers are. The expansion launched with 8 maps: Nacht der Untoten, Verruckt, Shinonuma, Kino der Toten, Ascension, Shangri-La, Moon, and Origins. Let's talk about Nacht der Untoten. All of these maps mostly stay the same as their predecessor, because these maps were not remakes, they were remasters, providing enhancements over the originals. Nacht did see the addition of Mule Kick, much like the remastered version in Black Ops. It would also see the addition of the Wonder Fizz, allowing the player to obtain Juggernog, Quick Revive, Speed Cola, Double Tap, Stamina Up, Deadshot Daiquiri, or Widow's Wine. Or, if the player had any of the perk-related gobblegums, such as Soda Fountain or Perkaholic, they would be able to obtain all of these perks. However, this also stands true for the next 7 maps we're going to talk about. Verruckt would also see the addition of the Wonder Fizz, allowing the player access to Deadshot Daiquiri, Stamina Up, and Widow's Wine, along with the map's base 5 perks, of course. Shinonuma would also see the same additions. The Wonder Fizz allows players access to Deadshot, Stamina Up, and Widow's Wine. In fact, this would be the exact roster that would be used across all of Zombies Chronicles maps. However, on the maps Ascension, Shangri-La, Moon, and Origins, Widow's Wine would replace PhD Flopper. PhD Flopper was not included in Zombies Chronicles due to there not being a dolphin dive mechanic, the primary mechanic used to activate PhD Flopper. Following the enormous success of Black Ops 3 Zombies, Infinity Ward would show the world their attempt